Is it possible that the next president of the United States is able to bring sound money back to the United States and restore confidence in a new hard money dollar? Well, if RFK Jr. has anything to say about it, that is exactly what will happen. Speaking at a recent PAC event, he outlined a plan on how to slowly back the dollar again with hard assets like gold, silver, platinum, and Bitcoin. He said his plan would be to start out very small with perhaps 1% of T-bills being backed by hard currency, things like gold, silver, platinum, or Bitcoin. Now, it's true that that move alone would have almost zero impact on anything, but direction and consistency matter far more than current status. And we are only in the terrible fiscal situation in the United States we're in today because we started taking very small steps in the wrong direction. And every time we wanted to take a little bit of a bigger step in the wrong direction, it didn't look that much worse because we had already taken a step in the wrong direction. This time it was just a little bit worse. And the reality is that it's fixable, and simply turning around and going the other direction, no matter how slow we go in the other direction, is the only thing that matters. As long as we head in the right direction and stay heading that direction consistently, it doesn't matter how small that first step is. The only thing that matters is that we keep on going. And that's exactly what he said, that depending on the outcome of that initial step of 1% of issued T-bills, that he would increase that allocation annually. Now, he gave a few reasons for why he thinks that this would be a good idea, and it's because he said that backing dollars and US debt with hard assets would help restore strength to the dollar, rein in inflation, and usher in a new era of American financial stability, peace, and prosperity. Now, if you're wondering how backing the dollar with a very small amount of a hard asset would have that effect, it basically comes down to spending. Because over the long term, the government has basically unlimited spending power because they're borrowing money to spend, but the money that they're borrowing is being lent into existence. And so while it looks like debt, it's not exactly the same as debt for you and me, because you and I don't have the ability to just continue to increase our debt indefinitely and continue to borrow more to pay off the old debt. But that's exactly what the US government does. And so over the long term, all the new dollars that they're spending are just contributing to inflation. It's expanding the total number of dollars in the system. It's increasing the money supply. But if they were forced to pay back some of that debt with a hard asset like gold, silver, platinum, or Bitcoin, those are things that cannot be printed into existence. And so essentially you are forcing the government into a position where they have to repay their debt with the same amount of purchasing power through that hard asset rather than eroding the value of their debt through inflation. And at the end of the day, that forces some fiscal responsibility on the government. Not a ton, but start small. In addition, RFK Jr. said that he would exempt the conversion of Bitcoin to the US dollar from capital gains taxes. Now, it's unclear whether or not he would plan to do the same thing with gold, silver, or platinum, but over the long term, it is a smart move to not have a transfer between currencies, between monetary assets, be taxable events, because it puts skin in the game to the issuer of the currency, in this case, the dollar. If I, as the US government, can inflate away the dollar by increasing the supply of dollars, then that will increase the price of harder assets, let's say gold and Bitcoin. But if I, as the government, can just capture that purchasing power back again through taxing those gains, if somebody tries to use that gold or that Bitcoin on a purchase, then that gold or that Bitcoin or that silver doesn't offer any real protection against the purchasing power being eroded. And so by eliminating the ability of the government to tax the gains that happen on your Bitcoin or your gold, that forces the government to have some responsibility, because now people have an escape hatch. They can preserve their purchasing power in these harder assets, and then that purchasing power isn't confiscated through taxes. As it stands right now, you either get screwed with the inflation or the taxes, which is probably why both the Federal Reserve and the income tax were both started in 1914. Federal Reserve transfers your purchasing power to the government through inflation, and then the IRS transfers your purchasing power to the government through the taxes. In addition to the tax benefits, RFK Jr. points out that if the event is non-taxable, then it's not reported to the government either, which means that the currency cannot be weaponized against free speech. In addition to a fiat currency being weaponized against free speech, we also know that it is used as an actual weapon of war. RFK Jr. spoke about his uncle, President JFK, understanding the importance of hard currency, that there is a deep relationship between fiat currency and war, and that fiat currency itself was invented to fund wars. Because when gold was money, governments had to collect the gold from their citizens and then spend that to fund the war. And when the gold ran out, the soldiers came home. But with the invention of central banking and fiat currencies, all governments had to do was continue to print more paper. They could continue to fund the war and steal purchasing power from their citizens in order to fund the war without their citizens' permission through inflating the money supply. It's unclear whether or not any of these things would actually be able to happen underneath an RFK Jr. administration. Campaign promises rarely turn into reality after a won election. But it is interesting how popular RFK Jr. has become recently, especially considering pretty much nobody knew who he was even a year ago. I recently ran a poll on Twitter where I asked if you had to pick from the below options, who would you choose to be the next president of the United States? RFK Jr. won with 47% of the votes. This was competing against Jamie Dimon, who at the time was in the news for potentially running, Trump and Biden. A few weeks later, I ran another poll, this time pitting RFK Jr. against Ron DeSantis and Vivek Ramaswamy, with RFK Jr. winning 52% of the votes. Now, admittedly, this is a tiny sample size and is clearly a reflection of anybody who saw this tweet from me, which would be my followers. But it is very interesting considering the fact that, again, very few people had ever even heard of RFK Jr. even a year ago. He's continued to say very surprising things that you don't typically hear presidential candidates talk about, and a plan outlined to start to back the US dollar again with hard assets like gold, silver, platinum, and Bitcoin is certainly one of those. In today's day and age where people are extremely concerned about runaway inflation, the death of the US dollar, the out of control spending of the government, and free speech and censorship, it's topics like this that may make him even more popular, at least with people, definitely not with those who are in charge right now. As you all know, I love precious metals. I'm a huge fan of gold and silver, and I think Bitcoin should be a part of everybody's portfolio, even just a couple percent. If you're interested in knowing more about the exact outline for what I consider a bulletproof portfolio, that's exactly what I teach all my members of Heresy Financial University. This is my online membership where I teach people how to make more, keep more, and give more, basically by teaching you how the economic machine works. We talk about portfolio allocation, advanced hedging strategies, fundamental analysis, and much, much more. If you're interested, sign up with the link in the description below. As always, thanks so much for watching. Have a great day.